Welcome to the Tepper School of Business Multimedia Series. For more information on the Tepper School at Carnegie Mellon, please visit us at www.tepper.cmu.edu/multimedia. And now, here's your selected video.
The Foundation for a Sustainable Future came out of a kind of looking forward into a further future that I imagined my son experiencing, 30 or 40 or 50 years out. And I started wondering what he would need to do, what he would need to be in order to prepare for his future. And the more I investigated what that future world might look like, on the basis of, the converging trends, there's lots of different trends in the world. The more I studied that, the more concerned I became about the future for the planet as a whole, because there are a number of very big issues that were not being addressed, perhaps for political reasons or cultural reasons or just out of inertia. I'm just not sure, or maybe lack of awareness. And it just seemed like people needed to step up and take action, because the way that things happen is people stepping up and doing them. And we cannot expect somebody else to take steps and take actions if we are not prepared to take them ourselves. And I decided that instead of waiting for somebody else to be responsible about it and take it on, I chose to take it on myself and be part of the solution, looking to be part of the solution, rather actively being part of the solution rather than passively being part of the solution. And I think that taking that initiative and being willing to step forward and invest in the future is the kind of thing that an entrepreneur does. And I would say from that point of view, it flowed from what I got from Jack Thorne and also from the Tepper School. If you don't have the time and you don't have the money and you don't have the other resources that you need to move something forward, then of course you're not going to be able to do it. So this is part of my thinking as well, that if the people who are in a position to do something about it don't do it, why should we expect the people who, for whatever reason, are not in that same kind of fortunate position? How can we expect them to do it? I mean, they've got a lot of other issues to deal with. So it was doubly incumbent on me, I would say, not just a responsibility that I took on for myself, but I felt like I owed it to the world that I live in. My conception of my self-interest is not simply myself, but everybody and everything. Well, there's some people who say, oh, well, there's no problem, everything's fine. It's we don't want to change anything. And, they're very happy and self-satisfied and, life works for them. And so they think it's okay. And then there are others who are concerned, but don't know what they can do and feel like it's a bigger issue than they are willing to confront for themselves. And so, they just kind of step back and say, well, politicians, president, that's who should deal with it. Then there are others who think that, well, maybe there's a business opportunity here. And it's true. There is a huge business opportunity in the change. There is a change underway in the world right now, starting with the energy infrastructure, which is probably the biggest issue that we're going to deal with in the next 20 or 30 years, and then going on to other new technologies that are going to be needed to take us into a more sustainable world. And so they see these opportunities and they think, well, how can I participate? How can I make money out of it? And I think this is a good approach, because the more people who get into thinking ahead and creating the next future the faster it will happen. So it turns out that self-interest and the profit motive can be put into the service of moving the world towards sustainability. And that excites me greatly because I know that I can count on self-interest as being something that motivates people. There's a bunch of people who are interested in the environment, interested in sustainability. A lot of them, go into the nonprofits and, go into, the kinds of professions that you would expect passionate environmentalists to get into. But they are not necessarily able to make change happen in a very broad context, because they can apply a little bit of political pressure, they can get to the media, etc. But in my analysis, the driving force in the world is economic. The driving force is, within a capitalist system, profit. And what you need are investments, and you need the people who will execute, you need the technology, you need to have a regulatory structure that will enable or allow all of this to move forward, and then you need to have markets that will accommodate and invite the new technologies. And when the new technologies, when the new businesses actually provide value, that then they automatically become successful. It's not something that you had to force on people. It happens by itself. It's self-fulfilling, if you will. I think that it's fair to say that most people around the world at this time see environmentalism, sustainability, all of these things as kind of nice, but they take money. They need support. They can't make it on their own. And what I want people to see is that sustainability offers opportunities, business opportunities, opportunities for jobs, opportunities to do well, and opportunities to do something good at the same time. That students who do not have to make a choice between a career that they can be passionate about and that they can be personally interested in, like working for a nonprofit, versus a career that's going to make them enough money that they can feed themselves and feed their families and make a lot of money. A lot of people kind of interested in that. Getting that across is why I have these competitions. And bringing it to Pittsburgh is I'm looking for CMU to be the global center for this kind of thinking, because we have a tremendous technology background, or a tremendous technology schools and a tremendous business school, and it would be a great place for these two to marry, for them to get together. And for students, I mean, there's a lot of students who come up and who I have interacted with, who say, well, but I don't really know how much money you can make, and I'm torn between a career here and a career there. So no, you don't have to sacrifice anything. You can make them both work at the same time. So taking it to countries like India and China, or Africa or South America, these are the places where the greatest amount of population increase, the greatest amount of new economic development in the 21st century is likely to occur. So I want to get there and infect the students there with this thought, with this concept, so that these countries can take a different direction. Because 20 years from now, I hope that the students who have been exposed to this thought will be the business leaders, and they will be making the decisions about what the large corporations are going to be doing, what their own businesses are going to be doing, and they're going to be going in a direction of sustainability versus a direction of anti-sustainability. And if I can have that kind of impact, I would be eternally grateful. Generally speaking, I mean, given what we know about the state of technology today, about the state of population growth, about the state of the different political systems, the state of the economic systems, the way that all of these are interacting right now, we have perhaps a 20 or 30 year window to change the energy infrastructure to move to renewable, non-polluting, non-carbon-based energy. That's the first step. If we don't solve that problem, it is my belief that we're going to have some very major problems globally that I don't even want to discuss, don't even want to get into. I think it would be quite catastrophic. I mean, really what we're talking about is a transformation in the way that people see themselves, and people see themselves in the context of their economy and in the context of the world, and for values to change in such a way that people don't think of their very immediate short-term gratification as being sufficient for them to make decisions that are going to have long-term impacts. If you think strategically, so beyond 5 years or 10 years, you think strategically. So I can be a multi-millionaire, billionaire, and if I'm not able to have a world that's worth living in 10 years from now, or 20 years, or 30 years, or 50 years, and my children are not able to breathe, and not able to, there's chaos on the street, all the money in the world is quite useless. Okay, it's meaningless. And in countries where there have been major dislocations in the past due to the ecology not being able to support the population and the consumption levels, given the level of technology that is there at the time, the rich actually become targets rather than being protected from the situation when people are unhappy on the streets. They don't have jobs, they don't have food, the things get chaotic kind of in a hurry, and all the money in the world is kind of useless. In an ecological sense, we have a bunch of capital, and we are not just living off the interest, but we are every year consuming a little bit of the capital at the same time. And you can do that in the short term. But over the long term, when that capital gets depleted, the party's over, and where do you go from there? There's no place to go. The problem is there's no place to go. We live on a small blue planet in a cold and inhospitable universe, and there's nowhere to go except we have to be here. If we have a slowdown, a major slowdown in the global economy, okay, you don't want to say the R word, but let's say the R word, a recession, a global recession, then demand will be down, and prices may well fall, and may even fall dramatically, because the producing nations want to maintain a certain level of consumption for themselves. Okay? However, there is not much elasticity on the supply side. In other words, the capacity to extract more petroleum from the world has diminished to the point where we may have reached the maximum level and be tapering off. Well, what happens is that demand is keeping on increasing. If we do not supply the difference with some alternative means like wind, like solar, like tidal, like geothermal, like whatever, then we will have a situation where in order to meet that demand, the price is going to go much higher. When you have the price of energy, the motive force for the entire planet, go up, there's going to be a number of people who are not going to be able to afford it. And don't forget that the cost of energy goes into the cost of making a car, of the cost of making steel, of making a washing machine, of bringing water from 50 miles or however far away this water comes from. Energy, there's energy embedded in everything, making the paper, whatever it is. So when the cost of energy goes up, there are a whole bunch of people who are not going to be able to afford it. Demand goes down. Well, there are a lot of things for which you need certain scale economies in order to be profitable, or in fact even to exist. So you might have a number of companies whose products become too expensive for them to make at the cost that they are making it. So those companies may wind up going out of business. Now suddenly you have, workers who don't have jobs, and demand goes down. So you can have a recession coming out of something as simple as the cost of energy going to $150 or $200 a barrel. Now, it may be that in certain richer countries like the United States, we're able to afford to subsidize those workers, to give them job training and to give them unemployment and so on and so on. So we are kind of making it work perhaps on a temporary basis, perhaps on a longer term basis. There are other parts of the world where that safety net doesn't exist. And that's where you see the massive dislocations. And there have been, over the course of the last 10 or 20 years, there have been several countries where there have been these kinds of problems. And it's been horrible for the people who have lived over there. Now, we shouldn't imagine that we are absolutely immune. It's simply a matter of time. You have to have profit. It has to be profitable. It has to be profitable on an ongoing basis. And technology is the key. So you need to keep improving various kinds of technologies that yield productivity increases in order that people can have the products that they demand. Now, it's possible also that people are going to simply adjust to having less, having different things that cost less, have more time, work less. All these things are possible. All these, and I'm not saying that those are bad in any way. I think that there's going to be a combination of all these kinds of circumstances that will have to occur over the next decades or century, I don't know. I hope we make it, in good shape for the next century, and then we'll see about it at that point in time. I'd say, in fact, that a business approach, a business-like approach, an entrepreneurial approach should be taken to sustainability problems, to social problems, etc. And I think that we're seeing that in others as well. There's a number of, the model for philanthropy, 50 or 100 years ago was to give a lot of money to the church or to a library or to a school or whatever. But I think that people are much more interested right now in actually solving problems. So look at Bill Gates. He's hands-on dealing with a number of, he's identified, a dozen or however many problems, and say, okay, I'm going to attack these problems. And he's dealing with it with his intellect, with research, with figuring out a solution to the problem. He's applying money to it because he has it, and he's applying his brain power to it because that's what's going to make the difference. The non-profit mindset isn't the model that's going to get the best results. It's the entrepreneurial mindset that's going to get the best results, that's going to do it in the most cost-effective way, that's going to get it done faster. And I think that more and more people who have the means and have the inclination are going to be taking this hands-on approach to solving the problems that are meaningful to them. I'm so glad that I came here. It was brutal, it was tough, it was demanding, I hardly got any sleep, but at the end of it all, I learned a lot. I knew that virtually anything that I ran across in the rest of my life would be a piece of cake after after going through the MSIA program here 30 years ago. And that's turned out to be true. After this, everything's been, hey, no problem.